Guys, like, comment, subscribe, share the video, especially if you love MMA and I guess boxing as much as I do. As far as my final prediction goes, I'm not going to change my prediction. I said Jorge Masvidal was going to lose this fight back in April or May whenever I initially made a prediction video. You know, I like to make redos of prediction videos. First off, because people watch them and take them seriously. Thank you guys. For the last 3 years, I've been making prediction videos. They've been watched more and more often lately. Secondly, I like talking about Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal. I love talking about them. They're two of my favorite fighters ever. Yeah, so I have to go with Nate Diaz. Based off what I saw in meaningful competition, Jorge Masvidal has really not looked. And here's the thing: I'm not saying he's not a fighter. I'm not saying he's not good anymore. But there comes a time and point in a combatant's life that I've seen in MMA and even in boxing, or even when they make a lot of money, like Conor McGregor. They're not as hungry as they used to be anymore. You know, Conor did not look the same in his last few fights as he did before he won the featherweight and lightweight titles. And with Jorge, he really has not looked like himself at his peak since 2019 when he beat Nate Diaz the first time. Now, I know Kamaru's just a better fighter than him. I know Colby's a better fighter than that. It pains me as a Masvidal fan to say that. And I know Gilbert Burns is, right at this point, a better fighter than Jorge Masvidal. But he really has not looked like that hungry guy as he did before. Nate Diaz, on the other hand, he's been beat by better fighters in MMA. And I don't really look at the boxing match as much. Clearly, he didn't look like him. He didn't look like he cared to be there. He just wanted a paycheck. Not to excuse Jake Paul from beating him. He beat him straight up. But that's just my opinion, you know. Nate Diaz has still wanted to fight. He has still wanted to fight every other time. When he fought Leon Edwards, I'm not talking about his fight since the Masvidal fight. He wanted to fight in that fight too. By the way, Masvidal can't use kicks and knees in boxing, so that's not going to help Masvidal's case either. He lost to Leon Edwards, but he wanted to fight. He beat Tony Ferguson, and Tony still looked pretty good in that fight. And I know he hasn't been himself since 2019 either. In a long time. Not the same, you know what I mean? He hasn't been himself in 4 or 5 years. But Tony looked as close as he did to his prime in the Chandler and Diaz fights that he has ever looked. And Tony got beaten that fight. Nate wants to fight. I think Nate wants this more. He needs this more than Jorge does. So I'm going to go with Nate Diaz by unanimous decision. What I see happening is I see Jorge picking him apart for about a round or two. I don't think he knocks out Nate Diaz because Jorge's not going to have the kicks and knees in his arsenal like he does in MMA. That's going to be a big disadvantage. Not a disadvantage for him. It's going to be more an advantage for Diaz because Diaz won't have to deal with getting kicked in the legs and getting kneed in the face or anything like that. So I'm going to go with Diaz by unanimous decision. I think he's going to get comfortable by the 3rd or 4th round, and then by the end of the fight, he'll outstrike Jorge. He'll get into a rhythm that Jorge can't stop, and I believe he wins a unanimous decision and gets payback for what happened to him 5 years ago. Give me Diaz by decision.